Hey, Ross Madden here. Welcome to the show. Today we're going to discuss the merger between Bayer and Monsanto. We're going to give Titus Frost a quick shout out for going to the march against Monsanto, showing support, being an activist, and we're also going to cover the Amazon Whole Foods refusing to label their GMOs, and we're going to talk about what a GMO is, what that actually means. And I actually wanted to make bumper stickers. I run a bumper sticker store on exposethedeepstate/store.html, and I sell this bumper sticker, FBI I'm with her. Pretty proud of this baby. I love this. It's $1.70 for, if you buy 10, they're $1.70 each. I wanted to make a March Against Monsanto bumper sticker, but it looks like Monsanto is no longer going to exist. It's going to be bought by Bayer. And the implications of a seed production monopoly could be vast. So we'll get into that, and I'm gonna go inside. It's starting to rain, and I'm gonna share my screen with you, and we're gonna get into some articles. So just starting my research on Google, searching for GMO news, the first three articles that popped up were a website called GMO.news, which I liked, GMOinside.org, which I was not a fan of, and a New York Times article titled, "Are GMO Foods Safe?" And right there on the homepage, no adverse health effects among consumers have been found, according to the New York Times. And that's a bunch of propaganda. Because if you go to the first website, GMO.news, you can see Monsanto hid the truth about glyphosate and cancer. And then the third article here, the FDA is blatantly hiding the fact that glyphosate is contaminating many foods in your pantry. Both of those articles are by Vicky Batts, who seems to be leading the movement against Monsanto. And that first article, Whole Foods suspends GMO labeling promise, will continue selling unlabeled GMOs after 5-year lie to its own customers. We'll get into that in just a minute. But first, is glyphosate contributing to the rise in autism? What mice models tell us. Recent experiments on autistic laboratory mice have established a connection between human autism and the negative effects of the herbicide glyphosate, warned a chilling Green Med Info news article. I almost forgot to say, this article was written by Edsel Cook on March 1st, 2018, and it goes on to say, glyphosate is the active ingredient in the prevalent herbicide RoundUp, which is used on important food crops. The chemical has deleterious effects on human biology, such as disrupting the beneficial bacteria found in the gut. Green Med Info cited an earlier study that also involved autistic BTBR mice that revealed problems in the gut microbiome could affect the brain due to a two-way connection afforded by the gut-brain axis. The liver normally turns cholesterol into bile acids that are either stored in the gallbladder or synthesized by gut bacteria to release as taurine or glycerin. But the livers of BTBR mice produce smaller amounts of bile acids, and their gut bacteria was less efficient in synthesizing taurine. Further down in the article, we come to a section titled Glyphosate, the Great Enzyme Disruptor, that says, the Green Med Info article traced these genetic deficiencies to heavy exposure of glyphosate over the course of many generations. Glyphosate has been proven to disrupt enzymes responsible for synthesizing bile acids and taurine, and crop contaminated by the herbicides would have been processed into foods for BTBR mice. The chemical also hampers the production of the neurotransmitter serotonin and acetate, a molecule used to power cellular processes. Low levels of serotonin and acetate are typical for depressed and listless autistic children. In short, the study concludes that glyphosate can be linked to autism because it disables important enzymes and vital processes involved in the healthy development and growth of living things like mice and humans. Glyphosate enjoys widespread use as a herbicide and drying agent. It is sprayed on wheat, sugarcane, and other core crops eaten by numerous Americans and their children. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 2017 saw the highest recorded levels of autism in recent times. Nearly 1 out of every 36 children in the United States is considered autistic. That's shocking. And you can find out more at glyphosate.news A lot of Vicky's articles are on glyphosate news, and that website comes highly recommended if you're looking for Monsanto GMO truth. Now I want to give you a quick look at what the pesticides are doing to our biosphere and the animals that live in our biosphere and on our plants. Missing all the monarch butterflies, they face a new pesticide threat on the horizon. This article by Nathan Donnelly. I'm not going to read the whole thing, all the facts are basically in one paragraph. So for me it hit home when Mexican officials announced on March 5th that the number of overwintering monarchs had dropped by an estimated 14% from last year. That's bad news for a butterfly population that has declined by 80% in just 2 decades. If you search for 6th extinction on Google, you'll get the Holocene extinction. And let's just look at the Wikipedia website on that for a second. The Holocene extinction, otherwise referred to as the 6th extinction or Anthropocene extinction, is the ongoing extinction event of species during the present Holocene epoch, mainly as a result of human activity. So for those who don't know about the geologic time scale, we are currently in the Holocene epoch, and that's going to represent the last 10,000 years since the Ice Age in the Pleistocene epoch. Continuing on Wikipedia, the large number of extinctions spans numerous families of plants, animals, including mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, and arthropods, which, just as a reminder, are invertebrate animals, including insects, spiders, and crustaceans. With widespread degradation of highly biodiverse habitats such as coral reefs and rainforests, as well as other areas, the vast majority of these extinctions is thought to be undocumented, as we are either not even aware of the existence of the species before they go extinct, or we haven't yet discovered their extinction. The current rate of extinction of species is estimated at 100 to 1,000 times higher than the natural background rates. Wow, that's also shocking. The Huffington Post wrote an article that came from a study done by the UN Environment Program that said 150 to 200 species of plant, insect, bird, and mammals become extinct every 24 hours. This is nearly 1,000 times the natural or background rate. But since we're focusing on pesticides, we're going to look at the insect effects. Mass extinction of insects may be occurring undetected. This article by John Pickrell back in 2005. Insects make up 80% of all known animal species. Though only 900,000 insects have been identified, experts agree that there are still vast numbers of undocumented species. Estimates vary between 2 to 100 million insect species could exist. That means that we know between 30% and 1% of the living insect species. Insects may have become extinct in recent history. Dunn first took a look at the well-documented bird and mammal extinction. He found that over the last 600 years, 129 bird species have gone extinct, which is 1.3% of all bird species. And then he applied that same percentage to the 3.4 million expected insect species that live on Earth. If insects go extinct at a similar rate as birds do, then approximately 44,000 insect species have disappeared in the last 600 years over that same time period. But we should expect that a lot more have gone extinct in the very recent time period due to the introduction of pesticides such as RoundUp.
Meanwhile, Bayer, the German pharmaceutical conglomerate, is in the process of buying Monsanto for $66 billion. This is going to create the largest agribusiness on the planet. It will control 29% of the world's seed market, 24% of its pesticide market. How concerned should everyday Americans be by that move?
Very concerned. There are two huge issues with this Bayer-Monsanto merger. The first is that it's going to raise food prices all across the United States and even beyond our borders. Farmers have already experienced a 300% price increase in recent years on everything from seeds to fertilizer, all of which are controlled by Monsanto. And every forecaster is predicting that these prices are going to climb even higher because of this merger. So we're going to have this massive price hike at a time when 14 million Americans have already been unable to provide food for their their families. And then we're going to have this ethical problem that's plagued both of these corporations for decades. Let's start with Monsanto. This is a company that produced Agent Orange, which resulted in one of the largest human-induced health epidemics in modern history. They made dioxin, they created and distributed PCBs across the planet, and now pending litigation against them for Roundup is right there. Looking at their rap sheet would scare the heck out of anybody with a brain. They're in the business, actually, really, when you drill down to it, it looks more like a cancer business than anything. They've been hit for false advertising and bribing public officials, then moved to Bayer. So we got Bayer and we got Monsanto. Moved to Bayer. This is a company that's joined at the hip with the Nazis during World War II. They produced a clotting agent for hemophiliacs in 1980s called Factor VIII. This blood clotting agent was tainted with HIV, and then after the government told them they couldn't sell it here, they shipped it all over the world, infecting people all over the world. That's the company. That's just part of the Bayer story. Right now, they're facing lawsuits over products like Yaz, Xarelto, Essure, Cipro. In fact, the company in 2014 annual report listed 32 different liability lawsuits that the company's now facing. So now you have the worst of the worst joining with the worst of the worst, and we have this magnificent experience of greed with these two huge corporations. This is a merger of evil, probably second only to the kind of merger that we'd see with DuPont and Dow Chemical. It's an ugly story. Again, the media is missing the point. They're not looking at all behind what these people are, and they're people. These corporations are regarded as people. If these are people on a witness stand, it's going to be a very ugly cross-examination. These are people who should probably be in prison rather than engaging in mergers.
I'm sure most of you are aware of the powerful Monsanto family. Well, they actually earned their fortune as Jewish slave traders. And they really haven't changed. They got caught putting illegal workers through slave-like conditions.
And because of this, Roundup and Monsanto have gotten an absolutely terrible PR record, so you can expect them to drop both the names Roundup and Monsanto through this, quote, merger. This article coming from farmfutures.com, Bayer obtained conditional approval from the Antitrust Division of the United States Department of Justice for proposed acquisition of Monsanto, not a merger. So Bayer is acquiring Monsanto. They're buying them out. They're going to take that name and get rid of it. It's going to be Bayer Chemicals and, Weed Killer, not Roundup. Those names are done. Now, I told you we'd return to the article Whole Foods Suspends GMO Labeling, and the Corbett Report actually did a great job introducing this topic.
A year after Whole Foods was acquired by internet retail giant Amazon, the food company is backing off its commitment to ensuring that food suppliers inform the consumer and the store itself if their products contain GMOs. Now, this is a little bit of it's got some details to it, so again, we'll always implore you to check out the stories for yourself. They announced that the company was pausing its GMO food labeling requirements. The requirements were scheduled to take effect coming up on September 1st, would have required the suppliers to disclose in their packaging whether or not their products contain genetically modified ingredients. The requirements, which were announced 5 years ago, we're now getting down to 3 months away from being implemented. As Business Insider reported, the Whole Foods bigwigs write that the pause is a response to suppliers' concerns about having to comply with two competing sets of rules: Whole Foods' own GMO labeling requirements and rules newly proposed by the United States Department of Agriculture, which are currently open for public comment. It would mean that the company that's long claimed the moral high ground would be no more transparent, at least as far as GMO labeling goes, than any other grocery store. James, it kind of seems like the public clamor against the Frankenfoods has kind of died down. Cassie and I were talking about this story a little bit earlier today, and it seems like it's died down, one, because all the big pharma food companies bought up all the competition, all the little guys. They get bought up a lot, as I kind of track in my own Food World Order coverage.
And that's what we're talking about today with the acquisition of Monsanto by Bayer. So we're going to look at some global seed industry market trends. So if you look at market cap, the top 5 major companies in the seed industry sector include Monsanto, Grupo Limograin, Syngenta, Bayer Crop Science, and DuPont. So Bayer already fourth in the market acquired the #1 seed producer in the world. This article starts, the industry has witnessed a substantial change in the past century, with farmers relying on purchasing seeds from a market with better traits rather than relying on seeds from previous season's harvest. Developments in seed technology have increased the momentum of the industry's growth, and the introduction of genetically modified crops has further boosted the seed market. The value of the global seed market has tripled since 2000, reached approximately $50 billion in 2014. So there have been 3 recent mergers in this industry. Dow Chemical and DuPont entered a merger transaction at the end of 2016, and it looks like DuPont ended up the acquirer. China National Chemical Corp purchased Swiss chemical company Syngenta for $43 billion, and Bayer has recently purchased Monsanto for $66 billion, and that was the deal that we're talking about today. This merger will result in the world's largest seed and agriculture company, and that is going to do 2 things. It could do a little bit of allowing Bayer to increase their prices because they're more of a monopoly, they're the largest and there's fewer options, but more, I would expect there to be less options for farmers who are trying to get away from the GMO crops as a result of the backlash from the public as people figure out the costs to our health that GMOs are having. And these are the doctors that are really leading the way, writing the books on GMOs. This is a complicated subject, so I wanted to dive into some GMO myths and truths, and this is a book published by John Fagan, Michael Antonio, and Claire Robinson. These are the truthers on this subject, and just one paragraph actually from this book. Typically, genetic engineering involves manipulating an organism's genetic material, genome, in the laboratory by the insertion of one or more new pieces of DNA or by the modification of one or more of the base unit letters of genetic code. This reprograms the cell of the genetically modified organism to make a new protein or to modify the structure and functions of the existing protein. Genetic modification confers new properties or traits that are not naturally present in the organism. There was one study done by Monsanto a few years back that I think gives a funny and good representation of what they can do with the GMO technology and why they might do it. The Monsanto GMO story, adding fish genes into tomatoes. So what did they do to the tomato genetics? The Arctic flounder lives happily in the ice-cold waters of the Arctic Ocean, its blood prevented from freezing by an antifreeze protein. Since tomato growers live under the threat of sudden freeze destroying their crop, researchers wondered about the possibility of inserting the flounder gene that codes for the antifreeze protein into the genome of the tomato. Preliminary experiments showed that in plants, this protein was not effective in preventing ice crystal formation, and the project was dropped. But on the internet, no story ever dies. The fish genes in tomatoes myth lives on, often illustrated with syringes plunged in tomatoes or drawings of tomatoes shaped like fish. Had the technology proved promising, it would have required extensive testing of the specific fish protein used to determine if it was involved in producing an allergenic reaction. So it just goes to show you, if this had been an effective technology, they would keep fish genes inside of tomatoes. That's what they're capable of doing. That's kind of the idea. They want to take qualities from one organism and maybe transfer them to another one. To me, this is a really interesting concept. I can see how it's going to increase crop yields, especially it's going to save tomato crops, and I'm sure there are other functions of this, but the health effects of the GMO technology has not really come to light, and Monsanto has certainly been squashing any of the research being done in this area. So as these companies merge together and become larger and larger, they are less and less accountable to the people. I think an important conversation that needs to be started is not just whether these things are labeled GMO seeds or not, but what that label actually looks like. And so when we take a look at one of these labels, what do we see? And we can see that it says country of origin, Guatemala. And is it that reasonable, or is it that unreasonable to ask that it also says seeds made by Bayer, or GMO seeds by Bayer Chemical? And then the next question is, what happens when we go look at a product that has multiple ingredients? Are we going to be able to do a full food audit on that product? So like, let's say we take salsa, which is going to have lots of ingredients and different ones. You got tomatoes, onions, water, tomato paste, sugar, salt. Are the tomatoes GMO? Are the tomatoes Bayer products? Are the onions GMO? How are they going to list out? Like, are we able to do a full food audit? And then when you start to look at these products that have a whole lot of ingredients, how are we going to, like, what is reasonable for that box to say? That conversation needs to be started. What does a GMO label look like? And that, I think, is the next step to knowing what's in our food and really eating healthy. Thanks for tuning in, guys.